Well, just before we get into the meat of the subject matter for this afternoon, let me give you a quick warning. At the very end, I'm going to get into some political stuff. It's going to have to do with, yeah, politics. Anyway, just a warning now, and maybe you're interested in that, maybe you're not. I will give you another warning when we get there. Okay, so let's talk, though, about Tesla dropping the designation of beta on FSD version 12. They've changed the designation. It's now supervised. My guess is a lot of people are trying to decide why did they make this decision to drop beta and go to supervised. I think that's probably being done for clarity because hundreds, maybe even hundreds of thousands of individuals will be testing this new system. They've never tried it before. It's been sitting on their car. They haven't paid the 12,000 or 10 or 8 or whatever. They haven't paid the 200 a month. They've never done this before. And so supervised, I think, has a little stronger statement about the importance of staying in tune with the car while you're using the program. So anyway, while this is going on, we've got supervised. I guess that's the end of beta. We'll see. Here was a encouraging, I think, Dillon Loomis, he's a major bull, and here's what he said about his testing of version 12.3.2.1. He's really moved along quite nicely. He's got the most recent one, I guess, that you can get. He says it performs in a town with only a few Teslas here. So he's looking at a place where, people say, well, California will do just fine and blah, blah, blah. And he's saying, where he is right now, hardly anybody has a Tesla, so this is going to be a good test. It says it just drove me to 7 different destinations across 3.5 hours of driving. 60% of that was in moderate rainfall, and about 50% of it, 50% of it was streets. He says my version of FSD version 11 had never been on. Okay, so his previous version 11, had never been on the streets about 50% of the way. He said he had how many disengagements? Oh, 0, none, 3.5 hours. Some of it in the rain, 0 disengagements. He says, now it was not perfect, and here are some of the areas where he thinks it can still improve. The auto speed is still a bit slow. There are many times that I would set it for 5 miles an hour over the limit, but it would continue to go a few miles per hour under the limit. Says there's an easy fix. You use the accelerator pedal to get to the speed you want, and FSD would then typically keep it there. He says there was a right on red arrow that it wasn't going to make. The sign said, no right turn on red except for right lane. And we were in the right lane, but again, pressing the accelerator took us right through. But there you go with a very odd sign. Talk about an edge case. This is what I was talking about the other day, where I think that Tesla is going to have to get with the various cities. They're going to have to make sure there's continuity in these signs. Tesla is not going to be able to read every single sign, regardless. You can imagine the potential sign. Only turn red between the hours of 2 and 7, except on Thursdays when there is no rain or something. I mean, you've seen these signs. Certainly parking signs are that way. I've seen many like that. Anyway, there were 2 confusing lane changes, he said, that didn't make sense to me, but nothing dangerous. So the car did a little something wonky, but it wasn't dangerous. There were also a few instances when it had a chance to go or make a turn, but out of caution, it waited, seemingly creeping a bit further forward, reassuring itself, and then the next opening, it would proceed. So anyway, that's from Dillon Loomis. Tesla RoboDriver has this to say over on X today. He says, my robot car, he just got, he's showing his daughter for the very first time, and his wife. My robot car just drove my daughter, my wife, and myself to Tesla Merritt Island. My daughter was interested in a used Model Y long range, but instead signed a lease on a 2024 Model Y long range. Instead, a used one, I see. FSD did a great job of getting us there and back from Central Florida. Tesla has just announced that they hit 6 million cars produced thus far. And that resulted in Troy Teslake and AJ both upping their numbers for Q1 to 423,000, approximately equal to last year's Q1. Both seem to be underestimating Cybertruck still, So I would take the over on this number. I think we'll beat this 423,000 number. The current street estimates are so high that I'm not sure it matters a lot whether the number comes in at 423 or 433, because there's probably going to be a hit to the stock on Tuesday in any case. This from the Washington Post. After 2 years, so this is they're talking about. Here's what they're talking about is this the Biden administration's effort to put lots of charging stations across the country. They wanted to get to, I forget, 20,000 charging stations over a certain number of years, or 20,000 charging spots in 5,000 stations. Anyway, 2 years later, after the legislation was passed, or more than 2 years later, he says, the article goes, after 2 years, the program has only delivered 7 charging stations with a total of 38 spots. Tesla puts in charging stations that have 100 spots in one location. So they have 7 so far. This is what they've been able to accomplish in over 2 years, where drivers can charge their vehicles, according to a spokesman for the Federal Highway Administration. The funding should be enough to build 20,000 charging spots, 5,000 stations, according to the analysis from the EV policy analyst group, Atlas Public Policy. Stations are open in Hawaii, New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, and under construction in 4 other states. 12 additional states have awarded contracts for construction, and 17 states have not even issued proposals yet. Last month, Republican members of the House of Representatives sent a letter to the Biden administration with a list of questions about the slow rollout of the EV chargers. Now, these are Republicans who normally could care less about EVs, but we put up all the money. We know that you're going to need these stations because there's going to be thousands and thousands of these EVs coming online. Anyway, here was their questions. We have significant concerns about that under your efforts, American taxpayer dollars are being woefully mismanaged, wrote Kathy McMorris Rogers, Republican of Washington. The problem with these programs, as these programs continue to grow, delays in the delivery of chargers, concerns from states about labor contracting requirements, and minimum operating standards for chargers, the letter continued. So the problem here is that this is so complicated and so confusing. It's almost like those signs that I just mentioned a minute ago. You send, they send out to the states and they go, okay, states, you can send us your proposals. The states then have to go out and they put together their own proposal with their own rules, and they send that out for contractors. And then, before they can send it out to contractors, they got to send it to the federal government and say, hey, does this meet your qualifications? And the federal government says, well, no, you have to have 17 union members on the job. If there's 18, anyway, it goes on and on and on. And they're saying, hey, it's almost impossible to do what you want us to do. And then you've got to find companies that can put these chargers up. The chargers have to be working 97% of the time. And we know that pretty much none of the chargers that are other than Tesla right now are doing that. The article went on to say, the Washington Post actually went on to say that, there's 2,000 fast charger stations in the United, or 2,000, I forget, I didn't write it down. Anyway, as we know, a bunch of fast chargers in the United States owned by Tesla that are working quite well, thank you, and that the rest of them, not so much. This is from etvbarat.com. I don't know this source. We'll assume that, I think you'll see that the sourcing is okay here. Billionaire Elon Musk's artificial intelligence AI startup, X.AI, the latest Grok 1.5 advanced version of the Grok chatbot, will be available on his social media platform X next week, Musk announced in a post on X on Friday. That is 100% correct. I'm just using them as the way to say it. All right. Musk even claimed that Grok 2 is also in training for now, and it will exceed current AI on all metrics. All metrics. Now, you'll see in a minute that they're close. Grok 2 should exceed current AI on all metrics. It is in training now. This is exactly what Musk said. Now, Entrepreneur, I'm going to switch over here to a different article from Entrepreneur. It says Grok 1.5 scored higher than GPT-4 on human eval benchmark. That consists of 164 challenging programming problems not included in the AI model's training data. GPT-4 had a score of 67, Gemini Pro 1.5 scored 71.9, while Grok 1.5 received 74.1, beating Gemini and the ChatGPT-4. Then with a score of 81.3 on the MMLU test, which covers knowledge of 57 subjects from an elementary to an advanced level, Grok 1.5 performed close to Google's Gemini score, 83.7, within the margin of error, I would say. It also scored close to GPT's 4 scores of 52.9, with a score of 50.6 on the math test, a benchmark that covers grade school to high school math competition problems. The ex-owner, Elon Musk, has high expectations for the next generation of Grok, writing that the next step after Grok 1.5 will outperform all of these AIs available on every single metric. Grok 2 is in training now, he wrote in his post. Now let's get back to the first article, the etvbarat.com article. Long context understanding. The company said that the advanced version of Grok boasts of a new feature that has the capability to process long context of up to 128K tokens, 128,000 tokens with its context window. This allows Grok to have an increased memory capacity of up to 16 times the previous context length, enabling it to utilize information from substantially longer documents. Then on the infrastructure, according to X.AI, Grok 1.5 is built on a custom distributed training framework based on JAX, Rust, and Kubernetes. This infrastructure allows for flexible training of large language models on massive GPU clusters, which helps to make sure the training process is strong and reliable with less chance of problems or delays. Then it says about 1.5 availability. Oh, we know that. Next week, it'll be available to a limited number of folks, and then it'll be slowly moved out to everybody. Also, it says earlier, Musk said that X.XAI would be open source, and that has already happened. All right, so that was interesting news. From AFP, we have this. Wednesday, in my view, it is appropriate. This is the Fed Governor Christopher Waller. He was at a conference in New York. I think this was on either Thursday or Friday. He says, in my view, it is appropriate to reduce the overall number of rate cuts or push them further into the future in response to the recent data. After swiftly hiking interest rates and then holding them at a 23 high to tackle surging inflation, the Fed recently pivoted to debating when to cut them. At its most recent rate decision, they decided to hold the line, of course, and that there would be 3 coming up throughout the rest of the year. Those were, by the way, that estimate of 3 is not a prediction, it's not a plan, it's not a goal, it's just an estimation based on polling the different Fed presidents and other members. Waller goes on to say, we made a lot of headway in reducing inflation in the past year or so, although the readings in the past 2 months have been disappointing. He says both overall and so-called core inflation, which strips out the volatile food and energy prices, rounded up to a 0.4% increase for the month of February, which is obviously not progress toward our inflation goal. So then he says shorter-term inflation measures are now telling me that progress has slowed and many have stalled. And may have stalled. But we will need more data to know that, he added. He says, so as a result, I was thinking maybe this would be a good time to take a look at the Truflation information and see what they're showing, all right? Okay, as you can see, we're sitting at 2.34. This is substantially up, but remembering also that Truflation changed their system to where their low of the year, I believe, was at, well, there it is, it shows right there, 1.94. So this is up almost 5% from where it was from 0.5% from 1.94 to 2.34. I guess that would be exactly 0.4%. Anyway, let's move down and take a look at how it looks on the chart. You can see that according to them, a year ago, we were up close to 5% in their analysis. We have gone down very dramatically, and that's great. There was a bunch of pop-up here, and then we've been trending down. But as of late, right here, you can see that we are now trending back up again, except for the last few days where it's been fairly flat. Now let's take a look, though, at the individual categories to see how that plays out. So we start with the food and non-alcoholic beverages. And what you have here is kind of following the trend line that you saw above. but with a very much bigger spike here, which would give an indication that this is one of the areas which is now under pressure. And again, food and alcoholic beverages would be heavily impacted by these gasoline prices going up as much as they have over the last 90 days, and probably going to continue to go up into the spring. Gasoline and diesel, et cetera. Every part of that process, from the beginning of farming to the end, or whether it's coming from overseas, everything is impacted. And of course, overseas expenses on freight containers and whatnot could also be impacting things right now, because I guarantee you freight costs, because of the Red Sea, there's a shortage of containers, shortage of ships, and that is raising prices. But we can see it's gone from a low of darn near, I think, well, let's also break this down real quick for you. We've got food away from home is the worst situation at 4.37, 4.38 right now. It was as low as about 1.5%. You've got then the food that you buy at home was actually negative for a while, and now it's up here to about 1.54. So big increase there. And if this continues even to hold at those levels, that's going to make it harder to get down to 2%. All right, let's go to the next category. And the next category is housing is next. Of course, we pretty much know the story on housing. If you've been paying attention, you know, of course, housing costs dropped during the middle of the year. I'm trying to make this more clear, but the green line is residential housing. You see it was down a bit, but toward the end of the year, it started going up, and we're now sitting at 5.61, according to them. The numbers that came in from CPI or PCE last week were more like over 6%. Then you've got the rents. That's other lodging. Then you got rents, which are around 2%. And this is an interesting one because Truflation had actually showed them at 0 previously. So this is one of the places where Truflation had changed their numbers. And then you get this lodging number, and there's something odd going on here. So lodging has been coming down a little bit. I'm sorry, that's the dark blue line here. And then all of a sudden it drops off a cliff, goes from about 2%, 1.22% here, and then all of a sudden drops down to a negative 5.26%. So I'm finding that to be a little odd. Again, this could be new information that they got in, information that is coming in from resources that they didn't have before. And this could be one of the reasons why they changed their numbers recently, except their numbers went up, and this is obviously going way down. But very big drop there, kind of suspicious. Again, on the 9th of the month, I will be doing a Spaces with Truflation where I'm going to raise some of my problems with Truflation. I think it's still good to look at Truflation for the trends, but I want to find out why it's getting harder and harder to trust them on the absolutes in terms of when they tell us what these absolute numbers are. Okay, let's look at transport next. Transportation, what we've got right now is we have transport total sitting in there at about 1.31. It's very much in line with where it's been. You can see that public transportation has been very flat, but what we're seeing is vehicle purchase course prices coming down. So you're now down to negative 2.1% on that. And then there was one other one here. Here we go. Gasoline and other fuels. So that was all the way down here. You have to really go down here. Negative 26.99, negative 27%. And now it's almost up to 0. I'm going to have to find it here. So actually, that's probably so hard. This is so hard to use. It's one of the things I could talk to them about, right? Anyway, it's now actually positive. It's in the positive territory. So that's not good, and I don't think it's going to slow down. This is going to continue up, and it's impacting everything out there. All right, let's go to the next category, which is, I should know these, utilities, which is not going to show much change here. We're going to show utilities as being very flat. Both electricity, natural gas, all of them being flat. I'm sorry, we have natural gas was down around 15 negative. Now that is popping back up to only 3% negative. So again, the trend line there is in the direction that the Fed would not like. And I'm not sure why they're so confident when you see that going up like that. Now, natural gas tends to do tend to have its price increases in the winter as opposed to in the spring. But in any case, we'll see what happens there. All right, then you can go from utilities. You're going to go, I think, to, yes, health is next. Health has been pretty flat, but is now moving up rapidly. Again, it went down to a negative down here, almost 2% negative, and now it's showing 1.5, 1.66% positive. We had expected an increase partially because of a change in the way that the numbers were designated by CPI and by others, something to do with the insurance payments. We were expecting about a 1% change, but what we're seeing here is way more than a 1% change, and it is going up really, really fast. Hard to understand what is going on with these numbers in this particular one. It was completely different just a couple of months ago here on Truflation. So it'd be another one of those ones I'd love to ask them about specifically. What's going on with that category? And this is one of the things I'd like them to do is I'd like them to talk about these changes. I'd like to say, here's what we're seeing within the health sector that's causing such a radical difference. Household durables and daily use. Now, what we've heard, of course, from from other categories is that durables were under a lot of pressure. People are not buying durables, so you'd expect the prices to be dropping. Well, you would be right, or you would at least be seeing a deceleration in the inflation. So what we have is that was up around 7%, now is down to only 3%, but still at 3% year-over-year increase. So it's still above the Fed's desired amount of 2%, and is in a category where people theoretically, according to everything I know too, people are not buying as many durables, and so why are they able to hold on to these price increases? I don't have an answer. Again, be a great question to ask. Okay, then we go to alcohol and tobacco. These have diverged a lot. So now you have tobacco products going still up at the 4.3% range, but alcohol, for some reason, is only going up the 1.27% range. Don't know why there's such a divergence. These are typically more in line. I don't know why they're even in line, but there you go. No explanation. I don't use either one of those, and so I really am not paying attention to those prices. Clothing and footwear. Now, last I checked, this had dropped off like crazy. It has. It was up around 5%. You can see now it's down to a negative number, clothing and footwear in the negative territory. And that has been a trend. That would tend to be where I believe a lot of this where we're seeing that retail and wholesale has a lot of excess inventory, retail showing 9% excess inventory. We know that was true over a year ago in the fall of the first year after the pandemic. We know that the Targets and the Kmarts, the Targets and the Walmarts, et cetera, were jammed with clothing that they didn't know what to do with. And but maybe that's still a year later. They are still having problems moving it, and so they've had to lower pricing. Not sure, but that would be one possible explanation. At least it's a category I know a little bit more about since I've been involved in that mass market for my entire career. Communications is pretty flat now. It had been coming down nicely from 2%, now sitting at about negative 1.42. Not much to talk about there, I don't think. Residential phone, voice over IP, and phone cards are up a little bit, whereas the overall number is looking pretty good. All right, then we go from there to education. Education is dropping like crazy. I'm guessing that this might have something to do with the fact that our young men don't want to go to university. Maybe there's other things going on here too, but we are now looking at only a 2.74% increase. That is very low compared to what it's been over many, many years. Education has been outstripping the rest of inflation for years. So that's an interesting one. Okay, let's take a look here at recreation and culture. This one is also down a lot. There was a lot of folks that were spending money like crazy on recreation and cultural items during the pandemic and afterwards. So that was bumping the prices up, and now that seems to be cooling off, where we're down to a pretty good number, 2.02%. And then we can go from there to the final category, which is the other category, but it's largely made up of personal care products and services. And you can see that this also has dropped like crazy. It was up around 7%, but it's still at around 4% for that category. So that is still under a lot of pressure. So overall, I'm a person who's believed that the issue was large, that the inflation was largely under control, but I think the oil problem is starting to bring that into question. And of course, housing obviously is bringing that into question as retail, or what do you want to call it, the residential housing, owned homes have continued to go up in price against all odds. And then rents are not as under control as Truflation thought they were. Now, Zillow and some other people have different numbers, so I'm not sure if that's another question I'll have on the 9th. Maybe you'll want to come and join on that Spaces. And as I have this conversation with Truflation about what they're seeing, what is different than what I'm seeing, and stuff that I think they could do that would make it a lot better for everybody. All right, make their stuff. I like their stuff. I want it to be good. I want it to be something that I can use and that I can speak to you with authority because I trust what they're saying. So that's what I'm basically saying. Okay, here's the warning. Here comes the political part. This is from Mario Nawfal. You probably see him all the time if you're on X. He's probably one of the most active posters on X. And he says that Biden has renamed Easter Sunday Transgender Day of Visibility. And here's the specific declaration, only part of it. Now, therefore, I, Joseph R. Biden, Jr., President of the United States of America, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the constitutional laws of the United States, proclaim that March 31, 2024 is Transgender Day of Visibility. Nope, that wasn't a parody. It's an actual presidential proclamation, which includes a long screed regarding the hateful things that folks are doing to transgender folks, like banning books and making laws to stop doctors from cutting up little girls. Yeah, and little boys too, quite frankly. Yes, March 1 has been Transgender Day for many, many years, but maybe a thoughtful president would have considered moving it this year. How much could that have hurt to not have it on Easter? And how much could it have hurt not to say those divisive things that the president put in there about extremists creating these problems and being concerned and putting up a fight against children being having their sexual organs and their sexual parts disfigured for life. I think it's certainly worth a conversation. I don't think it's extreme to think that that's something that needs to be considered. And I can tell you honestly, based on the research that I've done, is that there's no studies. There is nothing scientific that suggests that it's going to help these people in any way, shape, or form to have this done, and that many, many, many people are being harmed by it, long-term being harmed, sad that they did it, more depressed, more likely to be suicidal. Those are the studies that are actually being done. The studies that would say that it's beneficial, none, zip zero. They have nothing. So anyway, then, so some people are saying, well, look, Joe Biden, he's just, doing, it's always been on the 31st. It's just coincidental that it happened on Easter this year. Well, this isn't as coincidental. At the annual Easter egg rolling and painting event at the White House, it's been going on for years and years and years. They bring in the kids and they have a good time and they have an Easter egg painting competition. And then, all the kinds of stuff you normally do on Easter. Well, this year, by the way, the rules say that the Easter eggs cannot have any religious themes on them. The Easter eggs, when the kids paint them, cannot have any religious themes painted on them, like a cross. Yes. Anyway, if you can still vote for this disrespectful POTUS, who's always so concerned about hurting people's feelings, except, of course, for Christians, which he claims to be. Anyway, I'm certainly not as worried about what the orange man might do as I am about what this guy might do to the largest voting bloc in the country, Christians. Anyway, but there's more to this. Governor Kathy Hochul, she today also issued a proclamation declaring March 31st Transgender Day of Visibility, and she says that they're going to light up all of New York State's landmarks in light pink, white, and light blue tomorrow, March 31st, in celebration of Transgender Day of Visibility. So Kathy Hochul wants to really take it away from Easter. She wants to really put the focus on something else by lighting up the city and forcing these different facilities to be lit up in other than Easter colors. Well, those are Easter colors: light blue, light green, pastels, except they've been co-opted. Anyway, earlier today, I did a video. By the way, I'd love to hear your commentary. I'm sure you're going to give it to me anyway. Earlier today, I did a video on the new narrative that Tesla should and hopefully will get happening. It's not for them, of course. It's a narrative that the street will start feeling, the sense, the story that the street will start having with regard to Tesla, that's going to come right out of this FSD 12 revolutionary capabilities that are being shown right now. If you missed that video, I suggest you watch that one. This is like one of those important ones. If the narrative switches, the stock goes up. I know you want the stock to go up. Maybe you don't. There's a few of you out there that have a lot of dry powder or have a lot of income coming in that you still want to buy stock, buy more stock in Tesla, and you want the stock to stay low so that you can take advantage of that. But some of the rest of us would love to see the market move a bit towards that 300, back toward those all-time highs. Anyway, there is the card if you'd like to check that out. And then, as usual, tomorrow I will have a morning program. I have not decided yet what that's going to be, but I will be deciding in the next 10 minutes or so. And then tomorrow night, as always, even though it's Easter, I will have the Monday morning program because I know you do want to know what's going to be happening next week. So that'll come out probably around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock as usual. And we'll talk about what you can expect. Well, you know what next week is, right? Jobs week. Yes. Kathy Wood on Friday, and then Larry and I on Saturday morning. He'll be calling in from Paris, and we'll be discussing what's going on with the Kathy Wood report. So lots of great stuff next week, but we'll talk more about that tomorrow night on the Monday morning show, which appears on Sunday night. Hey, it has been great talking to you.